Valentine's Day, also called Saint Valentine's Day or the Feast of Saint Valentine, is celebrated annually on February 14. It originated as a Christian feast day honoring one or two early Christian martyrs named Saint Valentine and, through later folk traditions, has become a significant cultural, religious, and commercial celebration of romance and love in many regions of the world. There are a number of martyrdom stories associated with various Valentines connected to February 14, including an account of the imprisonment of Saint Valentine of Rome for ministering to Christians persecuted under the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. According to an early tradition, Saint Valentine restored sight to the blind daughter of his jailer. Numerous later additions to the legend have better related it to the theme of love. An 18th century embellishment to the legend claims he wrote the jailer's daughter a letter signed Your Valentine as a farewell before his execution. Another tradition posits that Saint Valentine performed weddings for Christian soldiers who were forbidden to marry. The 8th century Gelasian Sacramentary recorded the celebration of the Feast of Saint Valentine on February 14. The day became associated with romantic love in the 14th and 15th centuries when notions of courtly love flourished, apparently by association with the lovebirds of early spring. In 18th century England, it grew into an occasion in which couples expressed their love for each other by presenting flowers, offering confectionery, and sending greeting cards. Valentine's Day symbols that are used today include the heart-shaped outline, doves, and the figure of the winged Cupid. Since the 19th century, handwritten valentines have given way to mass-produced greeting cards. In Italy, Saint Valentine's keys are given to lovers as a romantic symbol and an invitation to unlock the giver's heart, as well as to children to ward off epilepsy. Saint Valentine's Day is not a public holiday in any country, although it is an official feast day in the Anglican Communion and the Lutheran Church. Many parts of the Eastern Orthodox Church also celebrate Saint Valentine's Day on July 6 in honor of Roman presbyter Saint Valentine, and on July 30 in honor of Hieromartyr Valentine, the Bishop of Interamna. Saint Valentine. History. Numerous early Christian martyrs were named Valentine. The Valentines honored on February 14 are Valentine of Rome and Valentine of Terni. Valentine of Rome was a priest in Rome who was martyred in 269 and was added to the calendar of saints by Pope Gelasius I in 496 and was buried on the Via Flaminia. The relics of Saint Valentine were kept in the church and catacombs of San Valentino in Rome, which remained an important pilgrim site throughout the Middle Ages until the relics of Saint Valentine were transferred to the Church of Santa Prassede during the pontificate of Nicholas IV. The flower-crowned skull of Saint Valentine is exhibited in the Basilica of Santa Maria in Cosmedin, Rome. Other relics are found at Whitefriar Street Carmelite Church in Dublin, Ireland. Valentine of Terni became Bishop of Interamna and is said to have been martyred during the persecution under Emperor Aurelian in 273. He is buried on the Via Flaminia, but in a different location from Valentine of Rome. His relics are at the Basilica of Saint Valentine in Terni. Professor Jack B. Orrick of the University of Kansas notes that abstracts of the acts of the two saints were in nearly every church and monastery of Europe. The Catholic Encyclopedia also speaks of a third saint named Valentine who was mentioned in early martyrologies under date of February 14. He was martyred in Africa with a number of companions, but nothing more is known about him. A relic claimed to be Saint Valentine of Terni's head was preserved in the Abbey of Newminster, Winchester, and venerated. February 14 is celebrated as St. Valentine's Day in various Christian denominations. It has, for example, the rank of commemoration in the calendar of saints in the Anglican Communion. In addition, the feast day of Saint Valentine is also given in the calendar of saints of the Lutheran Church. However, in the 1969 revision of the Roman Catholic calendar of saints, the feast day of Saint Valentine on February 14 was removed from the general Roman calendar and relegated to particular calendars for the following reason: Though the memorial of Saint Valentine is ancient, it is left to particular calendars, since, apart from his name, nothing is known of Saint Valentine except that he was buried on the Via Flaminia on February 14. The feast day is still celebrated in Balzan, where relics of the saint are claimed to be found, and also throughout the world by traditionalist Catholics who follow the older, pre-Second Vatican Council calendar. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, Saint Valentine is recognized on July 6, in which Saint Valentine, the Roman presbyter, is honored. In addition, the Eastern Orthodox Church observes the feast of Hieromartyr Valentine, Bishop of Interamna, on July 30. Legends. J. C. Cooper, in the Dictionary of Christianity, writes that Saint Valentine was a priest of Rome who was imprisoned for succoring persecuted Christians. Contemporary records of Saint Valentine were most probably destroyed during this Diocletianic persecution in the early 4th century. In the 5th or 6th century, a work called Passio Mariae et Marthi published a story of martyrdom for Saint Valentine of Rome, perhaps by borrowing tortures that happened to other saints, as was usual in the literature of that period. The same events are also found in Bede's Martyrology, which was compiled in the 8th century. It states that Saint Valentine was persecuted as a Christian and interrogated by Roman Emperor Claudius II in person. Claudius was impressed by Valentine and had a discussion with him, attempting to get him to convert to Roman paganism in order to save his life. Valentine refused and tried to convert Claudius to Christianity instead. Because of this, he was executed. Before his execution, he is reported to have performed a miracle by healing Julia, the blind daughter of his jailer Astrius. The jailer's daughter and his 46-member household came to believe in Jesus and were baptized. Later Passio repeated the legend, adding that Pope Julius I built a church over his sepulchre. The legend was picked up as fact by later martyrologies, starting with Bede's Martyrology in the 8th century. It was repeated in the 13th century. In the Golden Legend. There is an additional embellishment to the Golden Legend, which according to Henry Ansgar Kelly, was added in the 18th century and widely repeated. On the evening before Valentine was to be executed, he is supposed to have written the first Valentine card himself, addressed to the daughter of his jailer Astrius, who was no longer blind, signing as Your Valentine. The expression from Your Valentine was later adopted by modern Valentine letters. This legend has been published by both American Greetings and the History Channel. John Fox, an English historian, as well as the Order of Carmelites, state that Saint Valentine was buried in the Church of Praxedes in Rome, located near the cemetery of Saint Hippolytus. This order says that according to legend, Julia herself planted a pink-blossomed almond tree near his grave. Today, the almond tree remains a symbol of abiding love and friendship. Another embellishment suggests that Saint Valentine performed clandestine Christian weddings for soldiers who were forbidden to marry. The Roman Emperor Claudius II supposedly forbade this in order to grow his army, believing that married men did not make for good soldiers. However, George Munger writes that this marriage ban was never issued and that Claudius II told his soldiers to take 2 or 3 women for themselves after his victory over the Goths. According to legend, in order to remind these men of their vows and God's love, Saint Valentine is said to have cut hearts from parchment, giving them to these soldiers and persecuted Christians, a possible origin of the widespread use of hearts on Saint Valentine's Day. Saint Valentine supposedly wore a purple amethyst ring, customarily worn on the hands of Christian bishops with an image of Cupid engraved in it, a recognizable symbol associated with love that was legal under the Roman Empire. Roman soldiers would recognize the ring and ask him to perform marriage for them. Probably due to the association with Saint Valentine, amethyst has become the birthstone of February, which is thought to attract love. Folk traditions. While the European folk traditions connected with Saint Valentine and Saint Valentine's Day have become marginalized by modern customs connecting the day with romantic love, there are still some connections with the advent of spring. While the custom of sending cards, flowers, chocolates, and other gifts originated in the UK, Valentine's Day still remains connected with various regional customs in England. In Norfolk, a character called Jack Valentine knocks on the rear door of houses leaving sweets and presents for children. Although he was leaving treats, many children were scared of this mystical person. In Slovenia, Saint Valentine, or Zdravko, was one of the saints of spring, the saint of good health and the patron of beekeepers and pilgrims. A proverb says that Saint Valentine brings the keys of roots. Plants and flowers start to grow on this day. It has been celebrated as the day when the first work in the vineyards and in the fields commences. It is also said that birds propose to each other or marry on that day. Another proverb says Valentine pervi spom laden, as in some places, Saint Valentine marks the beginning of spring. Valentine's Day has only recently been celebrated as the Day of Love. The Day of Love was traditionally March 12, the Saint Gregory's Day, or February 22, Saint Vincent's Day. The patron of love was Saint Anthony, whose day has been celebrated on June 13. Connection with romantic love. Possible ancient origins. The Feast of Saint Valentine originated in Christendom and has been marked by the Western Church of Christendom in honor of one of the Christian martyrs named Valentine, as recorded in the 8th century Gelasian Sacramentary. In ancient Rome, Lupercalia was observed February 1315 on behalf of Pan and Juno, pagan gods of love, marriage and fertility. It was a rite connected to purification and health, and had only slight connection to fertility and none to love. The celebration of Saint Valentine is not known to have had any romantic connotations until Chaucer's poetry about Valentine's Day in the 14th century, some 700 years after celebration of Lupercalia is believed to have ceased. Lupercalia was a festival local to the city of Rome. The more general festival of Juno Februa, meaning Juno the Purifier or the Chaste Juno, was celebrated on February 1314. Although the Pope Gelasius I article in the Catholic Encyclopedia says that he abolished Lupercalia, Sioux City UMC professor Bruce Forbes wrote that no evidence has been demonstrated to link St. Valentine's Day and the rites of the ancient Roman purification festival of Lupercalia, despite claims by many authors to the contrary. Some researchers have theorized that Gelasius I replaced Lupercalia with the celebration of the purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary and claim a connection to the 14th century's connotations of romantic love, but there is no historical indication that he ever intended such a thing. Also, the dates do not fit because at the time of Gelasius I, the feast was only celebrated in Jerusalem, and it was on February 14 only because Jerusalem placed the Nativity of Jesus on January 6. Although it was called Purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary, it also dealt with the presentation of Jesus at the temple. Jerusalem's purification of the Blessed Virgin Mary on February 14 became the presentation of Jesus at the temple on February 2 as it was introduced to Rome and other places in the 6th century, after Gelasius I's time. Alban Butler in his The Lives of the Fathers, Martyrs, and Other Principal Saints claimed without proof that men and women in Lupercalia drew names from a jar to make couples, and that modern Valentine's letters originated from this custom. In reality, this practice originated in the Middle Ages, with no link to Lupercalia, with men drawing the names of girls at random to couple with them. This custom was combated by priests, for example by Francis de Sales around 1600, apparently by replacing it with a religious custom of girls drawing the names of apostles from the altar. However, this religious custom is recorded as soon as the 13th century in the life of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, so it could have a different origin. Chaucer's I Parliament of Fowls / I. None. Court of Love. The earliest description of February 14 as an annual celebration of love appears in the Charter of the Court of Love. The charter, allegedly issued by Charles VI of France at Mantes-la-Jolie in 1400, describes lavish festivities to be attended by several members of the royal court, including a feast, amorous song and poetry competitions, jesting and dancing. Amid these festivities, the attending ladies would hear and rule on disputes from lovers. No other record of the court exists, and none of those named in the charter were present at Mantes except Charles's queen, Isabeau of Bavaria, who may well have imagined it all while waiting out a plague. Valentine poetry. The earliest surviving Valentine is a 15th-century rondo written by Charles, Duke of Orleans to his wife, which commences: Je suis des d'amour tan. Ma trace dulce Valentine. At the time, the Duke was being held in the Tower of London following his capture at the Battle of Agincourt, 1415. The earliest surviving Valentines in English appear to be those in the Paston Letters, written in 1477 by Marjorie Brueys to her future husband John Paston. My right well-beloved Valentine. Valentine's Day is mentioned ruefully by Ophelia in William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day, all in the morning betime, and I made at your window to be your Valentine. Then up he rose, and donned his clothes and upped the chamber door, let in the maid, that out a maid never departed more. John Donne used the legend of the marriage of the birds as the starting point for his epithalamion celebrating the marriage of Elizabeth, daughter of James I of England, and Frederick V, Elector Palatine, on Valentine's Day. Hail Bishop Valentine, whose day this is, all the air is thy diocese, and all the chirping cairisters, and other birds are thy parishioners. Thou marriest every year the lyric lark, and the grouse whispering dewy, the sparrow that neglects his life for lue, the household bird with the red stomacher. Thou mock'st the blackbird's speed as soon as doth the goldfinch, or the halcyon. The husband cock looks out and soon is spedd, and meets his wife, which brings her feather bed. This day more cheerfully than ever shine, this day which might inflame thyself, old Valentine. The verse roses are red echoes conventions traceable as far back as Edmund Spenser's epic The Faerie Queene. She bathed thee with roses red, and violets blue, and all the sweetest flowers, that in the forest grew. The modern cliché Valentine's Day poem can be found in Gammer Gurdon's Garland, a collection of English nursery rhymes published in London by Joseph Johnson. The rose is red, the violets blue, the honey's sweet, and so are you. Thou art my love and I am thine. I drew thee to my Valentine. The lot was cast and then I drew, and fortune said it shall be you. Modern times. In 1797, a British publisher issued The Young Man's Valentine Writer, which contained scores of suggested sentimental verses for the young lover unable to compose his own. Printers had already begun producing a limited number of cards with verses and sketches, called mechanical valentines. Paper valentines became so popular in England in the early 19th century that they were assembled in factories. Fancy valentines were made with real lace and ribbons, with paper lace introduced in the mid-19th century. In 1835, 60,000 Valentine cards were sent by post in the United Kingdom, despite postage being expensive. A reduction in postal rates following Sir Rowland Hill's postal reforms with the 1840 invention of the postage stamp saw the number of Valentines posted increase, with 400,000 sent just 1 year after its invention, and ushered in the less personal but easier practice of mailing Valentines. That made it possible for the first time to exchange cards anonymously, which is taken as the reason for the sudden appearance of racy verse in an era otherwise prudishly Victorian. Production increased, Cupid's manufactory as Charles Dickens termed it, with over 3,000 women employed in manufacturing. The Laura Seddon greeting card collection at Manchester Metropolitan University gathers 450 Valentine's Day cards dating from early 19th century Britain, printed by the major publishers of the day. The collection appears in Seddon's book Victorian Valentines. In the United States, the first mass-produced valentines of embossed paper lace were produced and sold shortly after 1847 by Esther Howland of Worcester, Massachusetts. Her father operated a large book and stationery store, but Howland took her inspiration from an English valentine she had received from a business associate of her father. Intrigued with the idea of making similar valentines, Howland began her business by importing paper lace and floral decorations from England. A writer in Graham's American Monthly observed in 1849, St. Valentine's Day is becoming, nay it has become, a national holiday. The English practice of sending Valentine's cards was established enough to feature as a plot device in Elizabeth Gaskell's Mr. Harrison's Confessions. I burst in with my explanations, the Valentine I know nothing about. It is in your handwriting, said he coldly. Since 2001, the Greeting Card Association has been giving an annual Esther Howland Award for a greeting card visionary. Since the 19th century, handwritten notes have given way to mass-produced greeting cards. In the UK, just under half of the population spend money on their Valentines, and around £1.9 billion was spent in 2015 on cards, flowers, chocolates, and other gifts. The mid-19th century Valentine's Day trade was a harbinger of further commercialized holidays in the US to follow. In 1868, the British chocolate company Cadbury created Fancy Boxes, a decorated box of chocolates in the shape of a heart for Valentine's Day. Boxes of filled chocolates quickly became associated with the holiday. In the second half of the 20th century, the practice of exchanging cards was extended to all manner of gifts, such as giving jewelry. The U.S. Greeting Card Association estimates that approximately 190 million Valentines are sent each year in the U.S. Half of those Valentines are given to family members other than husband or wife, usually to children. When the Valentine exchange cards made in school activities are included, the figure goes up to 1 billion. And teachers become the people receiving the most Valentines. The average Valentine's spending has increased every year in the U.S., from $108 a person in 2010 to $131 in 2013. The rise of Internet popularity at the turn of the millennium is creating new traditions. Millions of people use, every year, digital means of creating and sending Valentine's Day greeting messages such as e-cards, love coupons or printable greeting cards. Valentine's Day is considered by some to be a hallmark holiday due to its commercialization. In the modern era, liturgically, the Lutheran Church and Anglican Church have a service for St. Valentine's Day, which includes the optional rite of the renewal of marriage vows. In 2016, the Catholic bishops of England and Wales established a novena prayer to support single people seeking a spouse ahead of St. Valentine's Day. Celebration and status worldwide. Valentine's Day customs: sending greeting cards, offering confectionery, and presenting flowers developed in early modern England and spread throughout the English-speaking world in the 19th century. In the later 20th and early 21st centuries, these customs spread to other countries, like those of Halloween, or then aspects of Christmas. Valentine's Day is celebrated in many East Asian countries, with Singaporeans, Chinese, and South Koreans spending the most money on Valentine's gifts. Americas: Latin America, Brazil, Colombia, United States, Asia, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, China, India, Iran, Israel, Japan, Lebanon, Malaysia, Pakistan, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Europe, Estonia and Finland, France, Greece, Ireland, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Scandinavia, Spain, United Kingdom. Restrictions on Valentine's Day in some countries. The celebration of Valentine's Day has been banned in Indonesia, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia due to beliefs the holiday conflicts with Islamic culture. Since 2009, certain practices pertaining to Valentine's Day are banned in Iran. Iran's law enforcement force prosecutes distributors of goods with symbols associated with Valentine's Day. In 2021, the Prosecutor's Office of Qom, Iran, stated that it will prosecute those who disseminate and provide anti-cultural symbols like those of Valentine's Day. Although Valentine's Day is not accepted or approved by any institution in Iran and has no official status, it's highly accepted among a large part of the population. One of the reasons for Valentine's Day acceptance since the 2000s by the general population is the change in relations between the sexes, and because sexual relationships are no longer strictly limited to be within marriage. See also World Kiss Day, Dia dos Namorados, Sailor's Valentine, Saint Valentine's Day Massacre, Singles Awareness Day, Steak and Blowjob Day, Valentine's Day, V-Day, the global movement to end violence against women and girls. Women's Memorial March, held on Valentine's Day in Vancouver, British Columbia. Cake and Cunnilingus Day.